The ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, the agreement Washington had presented to the world as proof that American diplomacy could still contain the Middle East, ceased to exist. Not with a spectacular explosion in the hills of southern Lebanon, not with a formal declaration before UN cameras, but with a 6-word sentence spoken by a Hezbollah spokesman that summarized months of silent deterioration. We no longer recognize this agreement. The number that put those words in concrete terms was this: 60 days. The original deadline, the November 2024 ceasefire, had set for the complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from southern Lebanon. 60 days is just over 8 weeks, the time a college student needs to get through a semester of finals. When Hezbollah spoke that sentence, more than 500 days had passed since the agreement was signed. Israel was still maintaining operational positions inside Lebanese territory, and the international monitoring mechanism created to enforce compliance, a Franco-American committee with UNIFIL observers, had been issuing reports that both sides ignored with the same discipline with which they received them. And here was the paradox that American planners had failed to calculate when they drafted the terms of that agreement. The truce was not destroyed by those who rejected it. It was destroyed by those who claimed to defend it. Israel had used the months of ceasefire to consolidate a de facto security buffer in southern Lebanon, demolishing more than 1,200 structures that the Israel Defense Forces classified as Hezbollah infrastructure, but which included homes, mosques, and schools in villages that UN Resolution 1701 mandated be returned to Lebanese army control. Each demolition was presented by Tel Aviv as a temporary defensive measure. Each demolition was recorded by Beirut as proof that the truce was a fiction. But the true impact of this operation extended far beyond the numbers on the battlefield. The economic dimension of the collapse was as devastating as the military one. The World Bank estimated that the 2024 war had caused Lebanon losses exceeding $8.5 billion, the equivalent of nearly half of what remained of Lebanon's gross domestic product after years of financial crisis. The truce was supposed to be the inflection point for reconstruction. With its collapse, international credit agencies suspended the emergency lines that had been conditioned on ceasefire stability. Lebanon, a country that already imported more than 80% of its food, lost in a single diplomatic week access to funds that would take months to renegotiate. The equation had changed. Take a step back and look at the full picture. Hezbollah's refusal did not emerge in a vacuum. It emerged from a calculation that Tehran had been refining for months, with the cold precision of someone planning moves on a board where every piece carries a price in barrels of oil and air defense contracts. Iran had been watching 3 simultaneous developments that, taken together, transformed the rejection of the agreement from a tactical disadvantage into a strategic asset. First, Washington's inability to compel Israel to meet the withdrawal timeline had eroded American credibility as a mediator across the entire Arab world, not just in Hezbollah's eyes. Second, Brent crude had stabilized above $85 a barrel, securing Tehran an export revenue stream, even under sanctions, sufficient to maintain the flow of financing to its regional proxies at a minimum of $700 million annually, according to estimates from the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London. Third, China had increased its imports of Iranian oil by 22% in the first quarter of 2026 compared to the same period the previous year, creating a revenue valve that no American pressure could close. In a moment, you will understand why that third element, the China factor, transforms the nature of this crisis from regional to civilizational. But first, there was a human dimension that needed to be named so that the numbers would not remain abstract. Hassan Khalil, 34 years old, a civil engineer who graduated from the American University of Beirut, had returned to the village of Qiam in southern Lebanon 3 months after the ceasefire to begin rebuilding the family home, a 2-story structure that 4 generations had occupied. When Israeli excavators demolished the entire block on the grounds that a Hezbollah tunnel ran 200 meters away, Khalil did not join Hezbollah. He enlisted as a volunteer with the Lebanese Civil Defense and began documenting with geotagged photographs every structure destroyed after the official ceasefire date. His archive, shared with the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Office, contained more than 300 verified entries. This man is not the emotional protagonist of this analysis. He is the unit of measurement for what the truce had promised and what its systematic violation produced. A country where even moderates had lost reasons to believe in Western mediation. And here was the figure that conventional reporting was not displaying with the frequency it deserved. According to a Pew Research Center survey published in early 2026, confidence in the United States as an honest broker in the Middle East had fallen to 11% among the populations of Arab countries, the lowest figure ever recorded since the survey began in 2003, 11%. Fewer than 1 in 10 Arab citizens believed Washington was capable of arbitrating a conflict without favoring Israel. This number was not merely a public opinion statistic. It was the epitaph of the diplomatic architecture that had underpinned American influence in the region since the Camp David Accords. The historical analogy that captures this dynamic with the greatest precision is not Camp David or the Oslo Accords. The reference is any analyst would invoke by reflex. It is Suez in 1956. That year, France and Britain discovered in real time that their power projection in the Middle East had become an illusion sustained by inertia, and that the moment they attempted to exercise it was precisely the moment the world recognized it no longer existed. The United States in 2026 occupied an analogous position. It still possessed the largest military machine on the planet, still signed the agreements, still convened the press conferences, but the capacity to make the terms stick, the true essence of diplomatic power, had evaporated in the face of an ally that would not comply and an adversary that felt no fear. The plan had failed. In the shadow of this monumental strategic miscalculation, one actor had been watching everything with calculated satisfaction. And here was the actor that headlines were not mentioning with the frequency the data warranted: Saudi Arabia. Riyadh had spent the past 18 months constructing, with surgical discretion, a parallel diplomatic channel with Iran, beyond the reach and operational awareness of Washington. The collapse of the American-Lebanese truce did not weaken the Saudi position. It strengthened it. Each failure of American mediation was an additional argument for Gulf states to pursue their own security arrangements, independent of the American umbrella that had protected the region for 7 decades. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had declared in an interview with Bloomberg in February 2026 that the security of the Gulf will be guaranteed by those who live in the Gulf. The phrase sounded procedural. In practice, it was a sentence of strategic divorce. The archive was growing, and archives have no expiration date, but there was a layer we had not yet touched, and it changes the nature of this analysis entirely. The China factor. China did not mediate, did not propose, did not intervene. It simply bought. And by purchasing 22% more Iranian oil in a single quarter, it accomplished something no UN Security Council resolution had managed. It guaranteed that Iran had enough money to finance Hezbollah's refusal without suffering any domestic fiscal consequences. Every barrel loaded onto a Chinese tanker at the Karg terminal in the Persian Gulf was a barrel sustaining Iran's capacity to say no to American diplomacy. The cost to Beijing was zero in geopolitical terms. China signed no agreement, violated no truce, fired no missile. It simply opened the tap of discounted oil that kept its refineries running at $15 to $20 per barrel below the Brent price. And the greatest paradox of the entire crisis lay precisely here. The weapon Washington had wielded to wound Iran, sanctions, was at that very moment benefiting China with subsidized energy and destroying American credibility as the arbiter of the Middle East. And here was what that layer revealed. The crisis between Israel and Hezbollah, which headlines were framing as a bilateral conflict between a state and a militia, was in reality the visible convergence point of a power realignment involving 5 actors with mutually incompatible agendas. Israel, seeking permanent security at the cost of Lebanese sovereignty. Iran, using Hezbollah as an instrument of regional projection financed by oil sold to China. The United States, losing the capacity to make its own allies comply with the agreements it drafted. Saudi Arabia, building a parallel security architecture for the day the American umbrella closes for good. And China, profiting from every one of these fractures without placing a single soldier at risk. This is not merely a regional crisis. It is the first genuine test of who controls the security architecture of the Middle East in the 21st century. And the outcome of that test will redraw the map of global power for decades. Consider carefully what this number represents in practice. Since November 2024, when the truce was signed with ceremony and handshakes, Hezbollah received from Iran, according to Western intelligence estimates cited by the Financial Times, ammunition, anti-tank systems, and drone components in sufficient volume to reconstitute approximately 60% of its pre-war operational capacity. 60%. The truce that was meant to disarm Hezbollah had become the most efficient rearmament period in the group's history. Every month of ceasefire was an additional month of logistical reconstruction, operating under the cover of peace. And so we arrive at the question no analyst was answering with sufficient clarity. If the truce has failed, what replaces it? No answer was available, and the absence of an answer was, in itself, the most disturbing answer of all. Israel would not accept withdrawal without security guarantees that Hezbollah would never offer. Hezbollah would not accept negotiations while Israeli troops occupied Lebanese territory. The United States lacked the diplomatic capital to compel either side. And Iran had no incentive to pressure Hezbollah when the collapse of American mediation served its long-term strategic interests so perfectly. What remained was the scenario that every diplomat in the region described in private conversations, but none would admit publicly. An incremental escalation without a declaration of war, a daily erosion of the ceasefire line, a war of attrition that would consume lives and resources without producing victory for any side. Precisely the kind of conflict that destroys countries while never registering as a priority in international headlines. The truce had collapsed. The question was not whether the next escalation would come, but which event, a downed drone, a discovered tunnel, a missile that crosses the wrong line, would transform this silent erosion into open confrontation. And that event was approaching. If this analysis has shown you layers that the headlines do not, subscribe and join the debate in the comments, because the next chapter of this crisis will be decided sooner than any diplomat is willing to admit.